You're listening to The Talent Sync. The Talent Sync is a collaborative podcast production about anything and everything recruiting and hiring. Literally the kitchen sink on how all things in talent acquisition work together, should work together, and how sometimes they don't. Now it's time to sync up with your hosts, Leah Daniels and Kevin Grossman. Today's topic is about what happens when job candidates embrace AI. With special guest Heidi Gerhard, Vice President of Global Talent Acquisition, Strategy, and Operations at MasterCard. Enjoy the podcast. Leah, Happy New Year to you.
Kevin, it's so wonderful to see you. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2024. Sun is shining. I no longer have snow. The world is progressing.
That's good. You can keep that snow. I don't want it here, although we're getting rain, but that's what we need in the West. So that's all good, at least. And I'm hours from snow and don't want snow. But I have to tell you, I hope you had a happy holiday season. We just got back from our annual Disney trek that we do every year at the end of the kids' winter break before they go back to school. And it was a wonderful time as always, but I have Disney hangover, big time, in a good way. It's all a good thing. But just to kind of segue into our topic, and we have an exciting thing where we have an actual guest for our show, which I'm going to let you introduce in just a second. I went to ChatGPT and I asked, how do you nurse a Disney hangover? And it gave me a whole bunch of fun responses, including bring Disney home, which is why I'm wearing my Grumpy for Life t-shirt right now. So there you go. One of the 7 drawers for those keeping score at home.
Is your t-shirt the hair of the dog?
Yes,
is that what this is?
Bring Disney home. Put it on the rocks that drink. There you go. So, but you're good though? Yes?
Oh, excellent. I survived Christmas and New Year's. That's my new take on these things. I've survived it. Made it through with no illness in my house, which is exciting. And we are onward and upward here. But as you mentioned, we have a guest today.
Nice.
I would love to just introduce Heidi Gerhard. She's VP of Global Acquisition, Talent Acquisition and Strategy, and Talent Operations at MasterCard. And Heidi, welcome. I know before MasterCard, you spent 6 years at BASF, which is super awesome. And you and I met because we were chatting about the roundtable that I do with JobSync, and we were talking about all things talent operations. And at the very last minute, you and I had a almost sidebar conversation around the future of AI in talent and what we're going to do as candidates fully embrace AI in their process of going and getting jobs. And Kevin and I were chatting. We just thought this would be a really interesting way to kick off the year. So what are talent teams going to start doing as candidates lean into AI, not just for resume writing, which we see them doing, and now mass applying to jobs, which is terrifying everybody. But what are we going to do when they start using real-time prompts during video interviews? And what are we going to do when they're transcribing notes and recording our interview sessions? Like, so much to talk about inside this idea of how candidates can use AI going forward. So welcome. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Hi, Kevin. Hi, Leah. Great to see you both again.
Yes.
This is a huge topic and an exciting one. So there's the use of AI is really expanding quite rapidly, both on the organization side and with candidates. And so, you think about talent acquisition teams and how they're going to navigate this world, as it relates to the candidate adoption, I think we're really going to need to rethink the upfront screening and evaluation process. And so while on the organizational side, AI can be leveraged to help with shortlisting and skill matching, when you think about how candidates are going to be using AI to generate their resumes informed by the job descriptions and other organizational contextual elements, we may really struggle to truly uncover the best talent in the pool because you have AI evaluating AI. Which makes me laugh. So, I think recruiting teams are going to have to become much more discerning in that assessment process. But the thread I like to pull is that actually this may be a good thing. When we think about reimagining the screening and interview process as an effective talent evaluation approach. So we know that like the tried and true is always your traditional interviews, but are they really the best way, the most effective and inclusive way to get the best talent into the process? So I'm curious to see how this AI thing is actually going to shift our approach more broadly. I see job simulation-based assessments and behavioral assessments potentially playing a much stronger role in that candidate evaluation approach, particularly, organizations are pulling in on this skills-based hiring. So pulling on that thread and really driving a more inclusive and effective evaluation methodology going forward.
I think it's super interesting, right? One of the things we're already seeing this is, if you go backwards, and Kevin, you will support this, you go backwards 2 and 3 years, the drumbeat became simplify your application process, make it easier for candidates to say they're interested, simplify, simplify, simplify. And what has happened is these bot-based apply methods are able to apply because they're simple, right? The simplicity of it makes it easy for a little bit of code to go and answer the questions and apply for jobs. So it's interesting is, are we actually going to start watching companies front load those assessments that you're mentioning again? Or do they say, no, our application process is now going to be multiple steps. We'll take the big batch of craziness and then we're going to whittle it through the secondary step. Or are they going to make it all one? And I think it's an interesting question because a lot of candidates do balk at a 45-minute or an hour-long application process if it's all up front, right? And so we really have this competing energy around candidates who want simple, easy apply methods, but now are taking advantage of it, and employers who don't want to be overwhelmed with candidates, right? Oh, Kevin, what do you want to jump in here with?
No, it's okay. I just want to bring up a couple of things around that point because, yes, and Heidi, you know this first and foremost, you've been a great member of our Candy community for a long time too, especially at the years of BASF. But the reality is context for candidates too, right? Because if we made it easier, and in the past year with leaner recruiting teams, it's gotten a lot harder, even with the automation and technology that we do have to screen just the sheer volume of applicants across industries that have increased. But if you are making them do things, take assessments, tests, what we find in our Candy benchmark research is that if they're given context and if they're given some feedback as to why and what the results were, even if it's really, really general at the end of the process, but if they understand why they're doing it, then it does actually make a difference. And you get people that self-select out, right? That aren't going to necessarily, I'm not going to waste my time. You don't want those people. You want the people that are going to, I feel like I have the skills and experience. I understand the context of what you're asking me to do. I will do it. And then I get some feedback and it's a win for the candidates. And I would argue it's a win for you. Don't you think, Heidi?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Anytime you can add value back to the candidate, even if they're not selected in the process, but if you're giving actionable insights, even like on like a skills-based assessment or a behavioral assessment, if there are key takeaways and insights in terms of their strengths and opportunity areas, and then you think about like broader total talent model and evolution on where those skills can be leveraged for future career moves, I mean, that's a huge value add. And it all comes down to the experience as we talk about on the Candy side.
When you're thinking about these tools, Heidi, and you're in the business is considering the volume of candidates, and even if you add in these assessments, the other side of this is really the number of candidates that don't know they've applied, so they're ghosting, right? We're seeing that. Like, what are you guys thinking about in terms of how you assess from an engagement perspective when you've got AI in the hands of candidates now?
Yeah, that's a big one. First and foremost, if organizations are not using AI to help with that skill matching and shortlisting, they should definitely start. Because if you're not leveraging it to weed through the noise, then you're going to be constantly chasing your tail. It's just too much volume to get through. But then going back to that application process we talked about earlier, if we reimagine that and really think, what is the pertinent information that we need to know upfront to get to a shortlist, then this mass apply tools may become obsolete, right? Because it's really getting at the skills and the experiences that are going to translate to success on the job. So I was thinking about this, like if I could re-engineer the application process, I would look for skill proficiency, professional experience, and then from the candidate experience perspective, what are the key job attributes that they're looking for? So whether that's location, flexible work, the type of work, travel, but rooting it back in that candidate experience as the consumer, and then shift the process from applying to a particular job to applying to an organization. And now with AI embedded into the organization, recruiters can do the appropriate matching within TA to serve up relevant job opportunities for the talent. So it's not a mass apply. We have to go through thousands of applications for every single job. Some of those applications are the same candidate multiple times, but really optimizing the pool that you have and that candidate experience simultaneously.
Time for a talent sync break.
Hey everybody, Kevin Grossman here, president of Talent Board and the Candidate Experience Awards. Our 2023 Candidate Experience Benchmark Research Program will open in January and run through August 31st. To learn more on how your organization can participate, go to thetalentboard.org.
Break time's over. Now back to the talent sync.
I wanted to bring up a point going kind of back to the tools that candidates are using potentially. And by the way, Heidi, please re-engineer the application process. Can you do that for us all, please? Pretty please.
I support that.
I know,
so. It's a goal.
Yeah, totally. But anyway, so because candidates, especially professional candidate management candidates, senior leadership candidates, they've been using career coaches and career resume writing professionals and individuals, other humans, right, for decades to help them to try to position themselves as best as they can in the hiring process. So that's not new necessarily. AI is going to definitely fast track a lot of that, not necessarily always from a quality perspective. But what do you think are some of the positive kind of tools and technologies in the candidates' hands for them to then better position themselves? And again, not in the reality of this is really who I am and what I can do, not to falsify things I can't do. So what are those things you think candidates should be able to leverage better?
That's a great question. As we know, the interview process in and of itself is riddled with biases, and not every candidate is a strong interviewer, but that doesn't mean that they're, a poor performer. So I think any AI that helps candidates speak effectively to their strengths and demonstrate the relevant experience for the role, that'll help with more inclusive hiring. I think that would be incredible. I also really like the use of AI to synthesize company insights to truly get at the brand sentiment of a company. So helping candidates really understand what it's like to work for the organization, getting at that real employee experience so that they can make an informed decision on, is this really an organization that I want to be a part of? But what I love about that is it actually puts a bit more pressure on the employer to make sure that that authentic EVP and employee experience is aligned so that candidates really understand the organization's culture and environment. And then that proves to be true once they actually join the organization. So employers need to kind of step up and actively engage in those conversations around the work environment and the hiring experience.
I've been pulling some data, forward-looking data, which is terrifying as we look at the United States and the declining workforce participation rate, which we all know is happening, and the decline in just babies.
Don't terrify us this early in the year, okay? No, go ahead. Terrify us.
But by 2030, we're looking at like 8.5 million unfilled jobs by 2030, right? Which, by the way, is only 6 years away, everybody. 6 years, 8.5 million unopened job or unfilled jobs. That's from the McKinsey report that just came out. And what that means is that effective employers aren't going to just have to be good at hiring. Heidi, what you're saying becomes extraordinarily important, which is you have to hire people who will stay, right? Because having these turnover rates of 50 or 80 or 100% in a year becomes almost unsustainable for a business when there are no people to backfill, right? When we become in this human gap, right? And we know that with all the excitement around AI, it's kind of like all the excitement around the automobile. The whole process that Ford did, and we're going to have an assembly line, and it's going to be so efficient. And that didn't take away jobs. That created a lot more because efficiencies create more opportunities. There's a whole principle based on this. And so my suspicion is that the introduction of AI adding more efficiency into the process isn't going to take the jobs. It's going to create more jobs, different jobs, definitely more government oversight. And there'll be so many auditors available. But we're going to have all of this opportunity that's going to create more opportunities for people to do the work. And faced with less people to do it, I do think companies are going to have to figure out how to keep the ones they've got. They can't just keep going with this churn rate that we have seen historically for the last 15 and 20 years.
That's slowed down, by the way.
I'll get off my soapbox now.
I know that's definitely slowed down, but it's a good point, right, Heidi? Because you are having to constantly re-recruit to retain.
Absolutely. The other really exciting thing about AI is really around how that helps us with this total talent model, particularly related to workforce planning, as you were talking about, Leah. So if we can leverage generative AI to provide insights into the skills of our current workforce, everything, including employees, gig workers, contingent workers, what have you, bundle that with the talent pool, so our candidates, the external market, skill availability, and then overlay that with the future skill needs of the organization, identifying where we have gaps. Can you imagine the power of that? Essentially, it's going to help us build the future workforce with an integrated strategy, identifying the opportunities for upskilling internal talent, moving that internal talent, and then informing our external recruitment strategy, where and how we go to market. The potential is so huge to not only minimize significant waste in our operating engine, but to enable that improved candidate experience, because now you're freeing up people's times, our leaders, our employees, our candidates, and recruiters to have much more engaging and impactful conversations and results.
Time for a Talent Sync break.
Hi, Talent Sync listeners. I just wanted to share a bit about JobSync with you all. JobSync helps companies get more quality candidates out of their job board advertising and automates a variety of manual recruitment tasks by solving for the very low conversion rate challenges most companies experience on their career site. JobSync integrates your entire application, including all of your questions, directly into the various job boards' quick apply processes, providing you with fully completed applications directly into your ATS and resulting in 2 to 5 times more candidates while dropping your cost per application by half. This helps return up to 10 hours a week back into your recruiter's time through custom automations that are based on your business-specific recruiting processes. JobSync works with most major ATSs like Workday, SuccessFactors, and Taleo, CRMs, programmatic platforms, and job boards like Indeed and Zip. You can check out jobsync.com to learn more.
Break time's over. Now back to the Talent Sync.
I mean, the data will set you free, right? I mean, most of this information is there.
Yeah, no, I want to touch on that because you've touched on the theme of transparency a few times already. And everything that you're talking about, I mean, we've been talking about having a proper skills inventory inside organizations for a long, long time. And now we're to the point where the technology that we do have and just the level of computing power that machine learning is providing today to be able to truly get there. What do you think needs to change, though, in regards to setting the expectations with candidates? Because theoretically, we should be able to tighten up timelines, too, from pre-application to onboarding across the recruiting process. I mean, after you, of course, revamp the application process, Heidi, we got to make sure to get that done. But my point is like, how do we because, right now, candidate cynicism is really at an all-time high, at least in our data that we've seen. And last year was rough in recruiting as a profession, right? Again, leaner teams, higher applicant volume. What do you think needs to be then regenerated, reorganized? How do we now get to clear transparency with candidates based on where this technology is taking us? Is that what I'm trying to say?
It's a really good question, because without proactively sharing and shedding light on that process and how the evaluation is conducted, whether it's how talent is evaluated, what is that criteria, what capabilities the organization looking for, and how candidates will be communicated throughout the process, they don't have that information. There's an inherent mistrust, because it's either they go into the black hole but they get the stock, email rejection response. And that switches the candidate mindset to really trying to game the process. And so now the use of AI could bleed into more falsification, as you mentioned earlier. So I think it's in the best interest of employers to be very transparent. Like, these are the steps of our process. This is how we evaluate candidates. This is what we're looking for. Even being as open as saying, like, these are some of the interview questions that may come up in the process. And to be honest, they're usually getting that from Glassdoor or some of the other social sites anyway. But I think the more transparent and open organizations can be, we're leading with that intent to be open and honest.
It's a great point, Kevin, and Heidi, about the misinformation that candidates have, right? And it's the career coaches, Kevin, that you were mentioning before, and the resume writers have actually done an extraordinary job at informing candidates in the market forever. Right? I mean, the candidates believe that there's a magical parser that rejects them based on things in their resume, when in fact, the best we've seen in the market so far is the stack rank, right? Nobody's able to look at the resume and reject candidates based on resume content yet, or is willing to do that. But candidates in general don't really understand the systems either, right? I just was reading a thread last night, and the number of candidates who were saying this is unfair that Workday won't take my information from company X that I just applied to and then use it to apply to company Y is a really good indicator of how they think the world works versus how it actually works, right? Workday doesn't store the candidate information as the candidates, right? They store it as the employer's information, and they can't use it again and again. But candidates don't understand that. They just see Workday on all of them and go, oh, well, Workday has my information. Why are they making me fill it out again? I just filled it out 20 minutes ago. Like, this is silly. And it's a really good challenge for us to, mental model for us all to think about. Is there a reason why we make this so hard for candidates? While I don't think you should be able to take the information from one and put it into the other, because I understand data security, the browser is able to populate information, except Workday prevents it. So there are some things that I think our systems are doing, and I'm not picking on Workday right now, they just happen to be one that does this, but there are systems that are making it harder for our candidates anyway, and then you add in this misinformation, and I do think that's why you see them adopting, especially, Gen Z coming into the workforce, they're coming in disenfranchised, and they haven't even started yet, and I think they in particular are leaning towards these tools as they try to figure out how to navigate a world that they don't necessarily fully understand.
Yeah, so true.
One more quick thing for Heidi before we let her go, though. Just really quick, because Heidi, I know that a lot of organizations that I've talked with, even just the past few months, when we talk about generative AI and the impact on recruiting and hiring and the things that they're doing or not doing, because it's still a smaller percentage overall of employers that are really starting to play with generative AI and really put it into practice. The reality is that a lot of them are more comfortable now using it in conversational chatbot technology to communicate with candidates, to engage them early on, pre-application, through application, even scheduling interviews, even for our, high volume hiring is getting close to even placing those individuals, so actually screening them. And that seems to be a comfort area too, besides everything else we've talked about, because the workforce planning aspect is amazing. But is that something that you're hearing from other peers in the space too? I mean, there's a comfort level with as a communications tool.
Definitely communications tool for candidates, and tailoring those marketing campaign messages, really driving that persona-based communications to treat the candidate as a consumer. There's a lot of value there and a bit less of a risk, right? When you get into the screening, the matching, the shortlisting, there's a bit more of that legislation and regulation that comes into play that organizations are a little bit more risk averse to embrace 100%. So I do think that that's an interesting one. But I think the other piece for recruiters, when I think about efficiency, is really using like ChatGPT to streamline the summaries, the interview or the screening summaries into like succinct bites. I remember when I was hands-on recruiting, like that was one of the longest time investments, was really, okay, I just had a 30-minute conversation with a fantastic candidate. Here are all my notes. How do I distill this down into a compelling value proposition for the hiring manager? So to shorten that time period, I think is a great efficiency gain for recruiting teams as well.
I'm curious, as candidates use these tools as well, right? Because you can just go spend $10 a month and get your own recorder that does the candidate summary and their notes. I do wonder how that's going to play out as companies, despite all their training, have hiring managers that definitely go rogue on interviews and maybe say things they shouldn't. Now we have all of that in recording, right? I wonder how that's going to play out, because I do think candidates are going to be more empowered with the same types of tools, maybe lighter versions, but like the same types of tools that we have.
Oh my God, it's already happening. It's already happening. I saw candidates actually record interviews and have it for their own, documentation purposes, which is so interesting. And it was funny that it took the recruiters by surprise, but even though we have it recorded on our side. So it's leveling the playing field for sure.
I also do think though, like for me, and I'm a hiring manager at times, right? So if I have a candidate who's recording and taking notes, I actually find that to be a value add, because it's telling me something about who this human is and what kind of worker they are. Yes, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble, but there's also this element where you're, as an evaluation, it's sort of a soft skill that you're like, wow, this person is so focused on this interview and participating in it, and they have this thing capturing the notes and taking good notes on the other side. So if you're doing it right, should be a value add. If you're doing it wrong, this should scare you to no end.
Absolutely.
Well, I think, Kevin, we're coming to the end here. Should we say thank you to Heidi for joining us today and being part of this chat?
Yes. Heidi, thank you so much.
My pleasure. It was great catching up with you
Absolutely.
both. This is such an exciting topic. There's so much potential here, and I'm looking forward to navigating it with you in this space over the coming years.
Yeah, we'll have to check back in soon and see, like in 3 months when the whole world has changed already. Well, we will let you go, Kevin. It was great to chat with you today. It was nice to see you into the new year.
Absolutely. You too. Happy New Year. Thank you for listening to the Talent Sync podcast, a Candy Benchmark research program and Job Sync collaboration. More episodes soon. Subscribe via your favorite podcast player today.